It's the Infinite Podcast. Go tell your friends. It's the Infinite Podcast. My God, it never ends. It's the Infinite Podcast with Rob and Cork the
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite Podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom for movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We've got you covered. I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court. Court, how's it going, man?
It's going great, man. It's going great. Got my weekly dose of The Last of Us. Episode 2 just came out, and I think we're ready to talk about Episode 2 this week, too.
Yeah, so, again, we didn't plan on this. Mm-hmm. We planned on treating the show like every other show that we've done, but
when it's this good,
it's getting increasingly difficult to do that because, one, I mean, there's not a ton of stuff going on, like in the larger world that we really need to be discussing as far as like movies and stuff. I mean, next week we'll probably talk about like the Oscar stuff, right?
Yeah, because the nominations should be out. So our second annual react to the Oscar nominations, and Rob kind of just sits here while I ramble for an hour,
and then I'll foolishly be like, we're not going to do an Oscars episode, right?
And then we did the Oscars episode. Well, something happened at the Oscars. I don't know if you guys heard about it.
So we'll see. We'll see what kind of exciting things come to us.
You're going to tell by whatever my mood is of what happens at the Oscar nomination. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But we are going to talk about episode 2 of The Last of Us, titled Just Infected, directed by Neil Druckmann, the creator of the game. His first ever TV,
live action,
directorial debut, and what a debut!
Yeah, he did not
for Mr. Druckmann.
Yeah, one bit. I mean, he's got full control over this world, and I was so glad he got to translate that to in camera. And I think the best thing about him for this episode is how he captured the production design and kind of the ins and outs of what makes his world so incredible and so so different than everybody else's. I think he got to capture that, but at the same time, the main thing that they captured is the characterization and the emotion that comes with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was super impressive, and it was super cool to... I mean, if you go back and look at episode 1 compared to this one, you do kind of see some stylistic differences between what Craig Mazin did in episode 1 versus what Neil Druckmann did in this episode. Obviously, Mazin had more kind of ground to cover, and I think this was a smart episode for Druckmann to direct because it's pretty straightforward, and it's pretty, like, as far as, like, video game-ness, it's much more like that than the first one. Like, this is pretty much like walking through a corridor, doing some walking, talking.
Right. There's a quick time event,
action set piece, and then emotional punch right at the end. So I feel like, I think he's doing 2 episodes total of the show. So this is the first one. Then I think he's doing, I want to say episode 7 or 8 later in the season. So we'll see what those look like. And then
I just got to think if whatever episode he does, I have a feeling it's going to be the Joel and Ellie complete confrontation at the end.
Possibly, yeah.
That I don't want to spoil too much, but there's something that happens between the two of them towards the end of the game that I think it's the same reason why he kind of wanted this one in terms of, building out the world. I think he might want that one because that's like, the emotional crux between your two main characters. I think he might want that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense when the first thing that comes to mind when I think about like creators themselves, or not necessarily creators, but people have such a close attachment to their source material. Thinking about The Mandalorian last season and the episode that Dave Filoni directed was the Ahsoka Tano episode. So I feel like whatever episode besides this one that Druckmann directs, it's going to be one that's especially like meaningful to him and one that he definitely wants his hands on. So that makes total sense. But before we talk about The Last of Us, we do have some news. First and foremost, we have some more casting for Captain America New World Order, and Xosha Roquemore has been tapped for a quote-unquote key role. Feels like a lot of these days, people that get cast in Marvel things get that kind of label, like key role, unknown role, secret role, whatever the case is. So, I checked out her Wikipedia, IMDb, not a ton of stuff to her name. She was in Precious. She was in, what's the other thing that she's known for? The Mindy Project. She was in the Mindy Project as well. So definitely, kind of a more lesser known actress, but in a role that is, apparently going to be quite significant.
Yeah, the rumor floating around that A, she could be Diamondback,
Ooh.
and B, she could be a love interest to Sam. And you know what? I was just thinking about that. I was just like, Sam's been in the MCU since 2014, and he hasn't had any love interest, and he's about it. And I mean, good timing. I'm kind of glad that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier didn't dive into that too much, because they already had a lot of, thematics to kind of cover. So I don't think you add that plot thread in there. That might have been, a little bit too overbearing. But I do think it's something like this. It might give him some personal stake. I think that's something his character can use, is something like that as well. So it's just exciting to kind of see that Anthony Mackie's getting rounded out as a character. I mean, the big sell that they were talking about, like, he is not only Captain America, he's going to be like the face, he's going to be the hero face of this going forward, or one of the hero faces of this going forward. And I mean, the new leader of the new Avengers, which I think is pretty awesome. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a great point about not just him not getting a kind of like romantic plot line or anything, but like besides Falcon and Winter Soldier, that character had been pretty lacking in like character development.
Yeah.
Like it's been bits and pieces, but nothing like overarching. Like there wasn't, before Falcon and Winter Soldier, there wasn't a huge difference between Sam when he first appears in Winter Soldier all the way up through Endgame.
Yeah.
Like he was pretty level, like as far as being the same guy, same character, So, I mean, obviously Falcon and the Winter Soldier gave him a massive, massive buff in terms of character development. But, I think hopefully this next Captain America movie will really hit that in overdrive and not just develop him as Captain America, but also round out Sam Wilson, the character, because if he is going to be kind of this, the stand-in for Chris Evans, like he's going to have to be that leading man.
Yeah, it's important, because when you look at Chris Evans and Steve Rogers specifically, the thing you're concerned about is Steve Rogers. You're not too concerned about Captain America. You're concerned about, the man that's holding the shield. And if Sam Wilson's going to be that man holding the shield, he needs to be, rounded out completely. He needs he might need a love interest in there. He might need some stakes. He might need some secrets too. That was something that they added for Captain America that I thought was pretty well done, going through Civil War all the way up into, Endgame, into the resolution of that too. So I'm really excited to kind of see where Anthony Mackie goes. This Captain America 4 is gearing up to be like this like massive tale. I mean, it kind of feels like and for lack of a better term, like a part 1, part 2 with the Thunderbolts, because what's first? I believe this is first and then the Thunderbolts. Like, I have a feeling the way this is going to go is like Captain America 4 is going to be them looking for, going to Tiamat Island or Genosha or whatever you want to call it, and looking for the adamantium, and then they're going to fail. Like, that would be kind of interesting if they fail and his new Avengers fail, and then the Thunderbolts get set in and Ross is like, no. He's not Captain. He might call himself Captain America, but I have U.S. Agent and I have the Thunderbolt. Like, these are your Avengers now. Those guys that tried to do it and failed don't count. And I think it's going to be a win for Ross. And then I guess that battle is going to be, really big in the universe too, is kind of the battle between Thunderbolt Ross and between Sam Wilson.
Yeah, I think that's definitely lines up with everything that has been laid out so far in terms of what this kind of Captain America sphere of the MCU
and it's
looks
almost like the sphere is kind of infused with a little bit of Hulkisms in there too. There's a lot of Hulk undertones, and I mean, She-Hulk kind of touched on that a little bit. So I can feel like it's just something about the intelligentsia. If this is where they're going, I mean, MODOK's getting introduced, and just based off the trailers for Ant-Man, I don't know how much of a win that movie's going to be for the heroes. So I wonder if they get out and MODOK, links up with the leader and they try to form the intelligentsia. And then you have, the Hulk himself in universe and She-Hulk. But the biggest thing I'm taking from this is kind of, I know we're just talking about a casting of a character that's there, but just the idea of the new Avengers, I think that's what they're going to try to focus on. So by the end, it's going to be like the Thunderbolts and the Avengers, and like they're going to have like a hash out like who's going to actually be. And then what I think is going to happen, it's going to be like a situation where like there are Thunderbolts and new Avengers, but like none of this matters right now, because like we kind of all got to work together because we have a common threat. And I think that's going to be something like I still do think that I still think John Walker has a lot left to say about the fact that Sam's Captain America. I think that's going to play a big role into that too. So I do think John's going to get that adamantium shield. I think that's the thing that they kind of want from that. So like you have a counter to him. Like there's just something that's interesting about having counters to all the Avengers, and like the world might not all, just like how the world kind of bought into the Avengers before, I think that they might live in a world where people might believe in the Thunderbolts over the Avengers because, you know, Captain America, Steve Rogers is gone, you know, all those founding members are gone, Iron Man's gone, but you're telling me there's this new team of Avengers, but the government's giving me a team of superheroes called the Thunderbolts to help out.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, anytime they've done like a government-led thing, like there's always a way for the government to put a spin on it, like to be like, these are the new heroes, you know, and kind of put them front and center. And I think that's probably where it's going. I mean, Ross has always been that kind of character where he's like, this is my thing.
Right.
So,
and then you have to add Val into that as well. Like that's her like dark twisted version of Nick Fury. It's got to get added into that too. So I'm really looking forward to the end of Phase 5 seems to be something where it can be, you know, they're bringing together the world level for the Avengers, essentially, and it's kind of getting... I just want to see what this new Avengers team... Because we're going to... I do think this is the whole point. Like, the idea of the Thunderbolts and Captain America 4 being back-to-back is, like, to give us... Here's your new Avengers going into Kang Dynasty. Like, this is the team that's going to fight going and probably get their butts whooped, you know, going into that movie.
Yeah, totally agree. Super looking forward to that. Definitely going to be cool to get another Captain America movie, too. I mean, we both agree that it's probably... It's right up there with the most complete trilogy of any MCU franchise.
Yeah,
you know,
or comic book franchise, period.
Right, yeah, depending on what happens with Guardians 3. You know, that's going to, for me, that's going to dictate which trilogy is the best because, you know, Guardians 3 and the other Guardians movies are really special. So, moving on to another superhero property, we got a little Invincible trailer for season 2. It's been 2 years.
It has been
since
2 years.
Season 1 of Invincible kind of, you know,
took the world by storm.
And, you know, put Amazon Prime on the map as like a legitimate streaming service for things. With that paired with The Boys, like, you know, definitely Amazon feels like they've painted themselves in this corner of like alt comic book properties between The Boys and Invincible. So, you know, this wasn't anything huge. It just was a little meta kind of little meta thing that lets us know that season 2 is coming in late 2023. So probably looking at like October, November-ish for season 2, which, you know, would be 2.5-ish years since season 1. So, you know, like we say all the time, like it's not a bad thing that it's taken this long. You know, take your time. Season 1 was excellent. So, you know, season 2 is going to go bigger, going to go broader as many season 2s often do. So we'll see what that looks like. And I'm super excited.
Yeah, this universe, it's almost like Amazon Prime is like Dark Horse to like, kind of, you know, like Disney Plus's Marvel and HBO Max's DC. It's kind of cool like that they're like Image or Dark Horse. Just, you know, a different brand kind of to, you know, display superheroes that aren't just straight up, you know, good morality boosters. Like there's a lot of gray area, and I mean from the compendiums, like what they scratched from season 1 is like a fraction of what the entire run is. So I can see a show like this running for a while too, and it looks like the animation's getting stepped up. And it was kind of like a, you know, same thing you said, like a meta commentary that Steven Yen was talking about. As Mark, he was kind of saying like I was, you know, storyboarding and voice recording, like I was doing all these things to kind of get ready. And he's talking to Seth Rogen's Alan the Alien in the diner, which is pretty fun. But it's just like the whole thing is like it's coming. Like, don't worry. Like now you guys can stop bothering us about when it's coming. But that show definitely took everybody by surprise, including myself. I immediately picked up the compendiums, and man, like what's in store? It's like the same thing of The Last of Us. Like what's in store is like people are not ready for what's in store. Like if that season 1 got that crazy and bombastic and probably had one of the best finales for a superhero project and anything, like that's not even a fraction of what they're capable of. So I'm really, really excited that this show exists and that they're on Amazon Prime. They can kind of do whatever they want, and they can stay faithful to the source material, which this show really does. So
yeah, I mean, Seth Rogen loves this source material, so he wants to try to adapt it to live action. I don't think you necessarily need a live action adaptation of this. I think it fits really neatly in that animation.
Yeah, my only fear is if they try to do live action, it might come out a little bit like Jupiter's Legacy because of what you have to do, because all of their heroes are they're like really powerful. So I don't know if that's something that's possible, you know, with that budget too. But I mean, look what they were able to do with The Boys. And I mean, season 2 stepped it up big time in terms of, production value and special effects. All those things kind of got ramped. Or season 3, excuse me. All those things. I mean, season 2 still was an improvement, and then season 3 is an improvement upon 2. So they're definitely all headed in the right direction. And I told you this about Lord of the Rings, people are forgetting what streaming this is an Amazon company. Amazon has some cheddar in their bank accounts. So I think it's it catches you off guard, because it's I don't know how to tier this, but it's you think Netflix, because it's Netflix, they're the grandfather of this streaming thing. And then I would put HBO Max, only because of what they've been able to produce and the level of what House of the Dragon was on. And then Euphoria is a big moneymaker, and for all intents and purposes, The Last of Us seems like the latest line in that. And then you have Disney Plus, obviously, because they became the new kings of the superhero genre, being dropped on the streaming service for
and Star Wars.
Right, and main universe and Star Wars on top of that too. So that week-to-week big franchise is being dropped. And then Amazon Prime is also there too, but what is Amazon Prime? It comes from Amazon. It comes from $1 billion company, so...
Amazon Prime feels like kind of the middle ground between HBO Max and Disney Plus. Whereas Disney Plus, puts out all this content with these popular IPs, and, it's kind of content overload at times. And then I think what HBO Max does is exactly what you said. They are we're going to focus on this one thing, and it's going to be the biggest thing you've ever seen. And I think Amazon Prime fits somewhere between there. They're adapting things still, IPs and stuff, superheroes and that, but they're also putting a little bit more behind them. That's why you see kind of these time skips between when seasons of The Boys comes out, when seasons of Invincible come out, whenever we're going to get the next season of Rings of Power.
Right.
They're kind of in that HBO Max mode. We're going to focus on this one thing, and then we'll put out our Jack Reachers and this, that, and another thing. But there's these specific projects that we're going to focus on that we really want to put a lot into. And I'm hopeful, just as a gamer, I'm hopeful that the God of War Amazon show kind of falls into that first bucket.
I mean, they're getting a good blueprint from HBO Max right now, and just, playing the piece of God of War that I've played. And I mean, you playing both games and the games before that, you kind of and then playing something like this, I think the code has been cracked, and the code is television. I feel this is just this kind of feels like the Dark Knight, essentially, The Last of Us does, and do this, this is it, this is kind of how this is the pinnacle of what this can get to.
But also not, and I caution if any gaming company is listening to this, I stress caution, because you can't exactly replicate what The Last of Us is. Because
this is just good show making.
It's good show making, and it's a very special story. That can't be understated enough. I think, I've said I beat this drum before the show even came out, that I think the story suits way better as a TV show than it does even other than the game that it's based on.
Right.
I truly think, and having watched the first 2 episodes of that, my stance has only grown stronger and firmer in that belief that, no, it just so happened that the story, Neil Druckmann was a gaming person and not a movie guy.
Right.
Because, in an alternate universe somewhere, there's a Neil Druckmann that started The Last of Us as a TV show. You know what I mean? Right. Because it is that special. So, my fear is a bunch of these gaming companies are going to try to do this, and it's going to set everything back again.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
So Cobra Kai got a 5th season trailer and a letter to the fans letting them know that season 6 will indeed be the final season of Cobra Kai, and all I can say is what a run.
Yeah, good job, I can say. And good job in the sense of understanding your audiences. It's a big time thing that a lot of studios are a little bit tone deaf, especially when you get deeper into your seasons and you let some of your actors get a little bit more say in what they do. You bring on new talent. You try to go bigger and better than the last one. Cobra Kai, I think, it's one of the better examples of understanding what you have, understanding that it's cheesy. It's like an 80s movie thing about karate in the valley, as if karate was is like high school football in Texas. It's the biggest thing that you can ask for. But what they've understood is let's play into the comedy elements. This is fun, but when they get serious, what the later shows of that, or later seasons of that show have done is get serious along with the narrative too. Like some things were
Yeah.
stepped up as well. I mean, one of the best things for them is that their hand to hand was stepped up. It wasn't any more cheesy hand to hand. Like it was actually solid hand to hand combat. I can definitely see a lot of people that worked on those shows or on that show, you know, getting more opportunity. Not only, you know, the stunt coordinators, but also the actors themselves. I mean, Zola Maridueña is going to be, you know, starring in a superhero movie soon. So that cast has only, like, their fame is only multiplied from having something like that.
For sure.
So it's been one of my favorite, you know, guilty pleasure, and I don't even like to count it as guilty pleasure because that show's just fun. Like that show's it gets it. Like it's not trying to be the most serious show that's like we got to go out and win Emmys. Like they understand what they are, they know what their fan base is, and like it appeals to everybody too. Not a lot of shows know how to do that, but that generally appeals to you know the younger viewer because they're all in high school, you know, latching on, and it appeals to the people that were fans of the '84 movie and beyond with Ralph Macchio. Like it gets all those things right. So I'm really excited to kind of see because that last season had a lot, and that last season, you know, hit a lot of great beats too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, just what a kind of like a success story.
Yeah.
Like this started off on YouTube TV. Like the first season, it was like one of like the big draws of subscribing to YouTube TV, and then you know, Netflix picked it up for later seasons, and not a lot of Netflix shows get 6 seasons, so just goes to show you how much people enjoy this, and definitely looking forward to seeing how they close it out.
Yeah.
Hilary Swank's going to pop up in this.
I
season,
thought
right?
that I told you my theory of how they should do this. Like now it naturally has to be Hilary Swank, and then they should have like a last minute cameo in the end of the last episode, and it's just Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith would just send everything home.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I expect them to try and go big for this last season. That would really make sense.
Any actors you want to see pop up in this?
No, I mean, I think you kind of hit him. Like, I'd love to see Hilary Swank. She's like the white whale of like the old Karate Kid movies.
And
like,
she also was. Remember, like she didn't do anything for a little bit, and then guess where she popped back for her own original thing? It was on Netflix, and I think it was 2019 or 2020.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of cool if she comes back for this. I don't know why this popped in my head, and I don't think it possible, but at the same time, I just don't know I don't not believe anything anymore. Like after the whole, what did we talk about? I mean, like Christian Bale doesn't Marvel, like anything's on the table now. I don't know why I would want Keanu Reeves to show up in this for any reason. I think that would be so cool. I mean, Simu Liu would be kind of cool too. Give him let him fight a little bit more.
Put Michael J. White in there.
Michael J. White would be awesome in there too. That would be really cool. Who's the UFC fighter that was in last season? I forgot.
Oh no, I forgot. Last season feels like it was so long ago.
Yeah, well, it does.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
That season was bonkers. Just off the rails bonkers season. But they deserve it. They deserve it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We need like wait music.
Yeah, we do. I was moving on to something else. Oh, Tron. That's what I was moving on to.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I know you're super excited about this.
Say what you need to say so I can say what
Tron Ares has been greenlit for Disney, and it is going to star Jared Leto, everyone's favorite actor. So, thoughts?
I don't know how to feel about this yet. Who's directing this movie?
I have the name and I didn't write it down. But he did Pirates 5. What's his name? What's his name? It is There's that.
Joaquin Ronin.
You got it.
Or Ronin.
You beat me to it.
This is gray area, I think. I think this is the best way to put it. I mean, I have like a visceral emotional attachment to Tron Legacy, so I feel like I'm a bit biased here, and it's kind of where people are at in their careers too. And I mean, so many things play into a movie too, like Daft Punk created one of, like, we talk about it all the time, like how your score can go into making this atmosphere for your movie. Like Tron has so many things in its corner, and I mean retroactively in its corner. Like that Daft Punk score is like one of the best film scores of all time. It's one of the most innovative film scores. Lo and behold, Joseph Kosinski's the one that directs this movie in 2010. You get Jeff Bridges in this movie. Like there's so much in this movie's corner. And I don't think that Tron Legacy is, is perfect by any means. I think I've even said it on here, like, if you take Disney away from Tron Legacy, I think this movie could, like, legitimately be, like, really cool if you leave Kaczynski and kind of leave the production, like, the design of the world that they went for, because I think it looks phenomenal. Like, it's so, it's like such an inspired choice to kind of do what they did. So I don't have a lot of feeling right now. Like, I don't know how to feel about this just yet. So, we'll see. I mean, Jared Leto's been attached to this project for a while. I know he was really on board with, bringing Tron back. So it's just the feel of Legacy, is just, it's so unique. Uh-huh. So I don't know if they're going to go that route and capture that. And if this is a sequel, if this is something that's completely different, well, we have to see all those things too. But maybe one day we'll do an episode on Tron Legacy, and even the original Tron, and just kind of talk about, what I think Kaczynski was able to do with, like, maybe the constraints of having Disney, and some of the, it's not that there's, like, you're being strangled to do exactly what they say, but, like, yeah. I do think, some of these bigger companies will only let you do so much, and what he was able to do with that and kind of show off his talent just with that and create this. But there's something about Tron Legacy. It's one of those movies you can't put your finger on why it feels like that, but it just does.
Yeah. This is definitely an interesting maneuver. I mean, it's Disney doing Disney things. Like, they're like, hey, let's do another one of these and see what happens. But, I mean, Jared Leto is very, very, very hot cold.
Yeah.
From what you're going to get from him. I mean, we've talked about Morbius. We've talked about his appearances as the Joker. But, I mean, there's a good actor in there somewhere.
He's an Oscar winner at the same time as well. So
we'll see. We'll see what, it's like flipping a coin.
Yeah.
You don't know which Jared Leto you're going to get, but we'll see. And that's all you can say at this point, because, Tron definitely, I feel like it's funny that Jared Leto was also in Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Tron kind of has that feel, like that Blade Runner kind of aura to it, where it's not, it's not super, super popular, but, like, the people that do enjoy it are super passionate about it.
It's like Tron is what you call, like, a cult classic. Like, cult classics aren't, like, they're not necessarily critically acclaimed when they first come out, but, like, they grow a fan base over time that's, like, super tough and, like, very clingy to the thing that happened. And I think Tron has that. I always say, like, the prime example of that is, like, Pulp Fiction is, like, that's like the grandfather of the cult classics. So, I mean, you could probably date back, different movies that are cult classics, but we'll see. We'll see.
I have a note here to mention that Screen 6 is coming out on March 10th.
Yeah. The legend of Jenna Ortega continues to grow. So, that's the number one thing that they're probably concerned about, is, like, giving Jenna Ortega as much screen time as you can get. Cause, I guess for 2022, you want to talk about the biggest stars. It's probably, like, it's the coming of Jonathan Majors into the spotlight, and it's, like, Jenna Ortega. It's, like, the biggest pieces of like, acting of 2022. So, yeah. More Scream.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things.
You think anybody's going to scream in this movie?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd count on that.
I think there's going to be multiple screams.
It's one of those things where, they struck kind of gold with Scream 5. Like, they did the thing where you resurrect a franchise after X amount of years, and this one worked. Yep. So, we'll see if Scream 6 has that same magic to it.
Trailer's cool.
Yeah, trailer was good.
Yep.
Yeah. So Avatar, we had to talk about Avatar, has officially crossed the $2 billion mark. It's, as far as I know, has not shown any signs of really slowing, coming into, the end of January through February. I mean, eventually it is going to hit the wall that is Ant-Man Quantumania. So that is going to, obviously maybe spell the end of the run. But
we have 3 weeks before that.
Right.
So,
and people are still going to see it.
Yeah, and I do think people are going to see it during that run. I mean, of course, like, once Ant-Man comes out, I think Ant-Man's going to probably, if I were a betting man, I'm going to say Ant-Man's going to make somewhere from, like, 650 is, like, the lowest it's going to make, and I think its cap might be depending on like the word of mouth of like what Jonathan Majors, like if he does something absolutely insane or like this movie divulges into like, yeah, the multiverse is gonna end after this movie, like nobody's safe. Like I think the cap for that can be like 9 million or 9 billion.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Avatar's going for if they don't stop. But yeah, I do think that movie's gonna make a decent amount, but Avatar's just we called it.
Yeah.
Try to tell everybody.
Yeah, I saw it again last week on Sunday, and the theater I went to was like 3/4 full.
It's insane. I've been seeing screenshots of people showing like what their theaters are looking like by buying the tickets online, and like there's not a lot of seats available from each showing that they're going to.
Yeah, it's it's nuts. But yeah, it's another $2 billion movie for James Cameron. He's easily the most profitable director of all time.
Yeah, he has $1 billion movie in the 90s, $1 billion movie in the 2000s, and now $1 billion movie in the 2020s.
$2 billion movies. Both Avatars were $2 billion movies.
Or $2 billion, yeah.
It's absolutely crazy, but that's why this guy gets to do these movies.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the sequels too. And my favorite thing about this is that he spent so much investment into, people, character. Like that's what's gonna keep people coming back for these. Like the first one was the world, the second one, was the exploration into family essentially.
Yeah, super cool.
And I see you.
Super cool. And then the last bit of news I got. So this Agatha thing is, I still don't know what it is. I still don't know what's going on. The name has possibly been changed.
Yeah.
To Agnes of Westview. Apparently, could be the new name. Maybe not. Maybe it still could be Agatha Coven of Chaos. Could be like one of those things where like the title switches halfway through the season.
I think this show's going to try to play with us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole conceit of the character in WandaVision, was like she was the villain like right under your noses. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was Agatha all along, as the song reminded us. Yeah, I mean, I think, if that is indeed true and they're going to either change the name or masquerade the name, I think, the show is, I think it's definitely going to take some of that WandaVision flair of like being a little bit meta, playing with the audience a little bit. Obviously, this is the perfect playground for it. I mean, this is, besides Doctor Strange, this is the only other MCU property that explores the magical part of the MCU, right. And this is more like the witchcraft part of the MCU, whereas like Doctor Strange is, it's, as Bucky's quick to remind us, Doctor Strange is a sorcerer.
Right.
Yep. A sorcerer is just a wizard without a hat.
His points were made, actually. Falcon. That's a good point.
So, I mean, like we said, the casting of the show is kind of nuts. There's a lot of, like we mentioned, like there's a lot of performative people working on the show. So I wonder if there is going to be like a musical aspect to the show. But I'm in for this. I mean, I thought Catherine Hahn was undoubtedly one of the best parts of WandaVision.
Or Phase 4, period. She really, like, in terms of, like, your staying power and, like, what's memorable from it, I think she was the first big thing that was memorable of it as her as Agatha Harkness. So I do think this show is going to cover a couple things. I think it's going to cover... I think something's going to happen with her son, too, because you don't just go get Joe Locke, who had, like, one of the most popular shows on Netflix, and then have him be Wiccan, have him be Billy, and just be like, all right, well, we're not going to have anything be big. Like, I do think Elizabeth Olsen's going to show up in this show. Like, I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, think she's going to be in this. It might be an episode or two, but I do think she's going to show back. I think what they're going to try to do is slowly integrate Elizabeth Olsen back in until she gets back to the Avengers. Like, I don't know where you do this in the Phase 6 slate. Maybe it's a WandaVision Season 2 type of situation where to kind of like, because if that was the thing that started your television run, it could be one of the things that's like the last parts of your television run. But I do think it's going to get to the point where like, it's going to be one of these situations where it's going to be like, the Avengers themselves are going to need to like, either fight her or be like, all right, well, or she's going to need to redeem herself. Like that, her being the first character that we saw from Phase 4 would be an interesting way to go about it. Like this is the last piece maybe to beat, like
that's what I think.
He can just do whatever he wants. So we're going to need somebody that can also do whatever they want.
That's been kind of my theory since Multiverse of Madness, when, it was clear that she was kind of the epicenter of all of this,
Mm-hmm.
was that when push comes to shove, like by the time we get to whatever the quote unquote end game is for this Kang saga, I think it is going to culminate in Wanda and Kang kind of like coming to blows.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I mean, historically, if you look at the comics, like Kang in some iterations is terrified
Mm-hmm.
of the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
And they've been positioning her ever since probably even Age of Ultron.
Yeah, I
They've
was going
been
to say that.
positioning her as something other compared to everybody else.
Yeah, and it's funny that, and what's good about that too is like she has a twin brother that gets affected by the stone itself, so it's just like, all right, she has telekinesis and like low level telepathy, and he's got super speed, but like there's just always been this sprinkle of something on Age of Ultron, like there where she's like, there's something more about her, and then you get to, you know, Infinity War, and there's even a little bit, or Civil War, and it's just like she's like
the ringer.
She's the ringer there. Like we don't know how to handle this, and then you get to Infinity War and Endgame, and she's like, it's almost like they needed to take her away from the plot because you didn't know what was going to happen too.
She's the one who comes the closest to killing Thanos in Infinity War before he's, or in Endgame before he, you know, is snapped out of existence. Like she has him.
Yep.
She has him scared.
Just with her telekinesis. It's not even with any of her telepathy. And then she finds out that she would have been a witch even without like.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the prophecy of the Scarlet Witch, is like the fact that like those two things got mixed. Like the fact that she was a witch on top of her, you know, getting powers from, you know, what I still think is like her turning into a mutant, like also on top of having, you know, witchcraft unlocked.
When you start tracing those lines from Age of Ultron all the way to now, like it's been pretty clear that she is someone of status in the MCU, and I think that's all. And then Multiverse of Madness, you know, she disappears at the end. You know, she's not killed. She disappears, and I think they're just priming. Like we talked about it when we talked about the movie in our review. Like they're priming her for a big return.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, like it's gonna be one of those like crowd pop in the theater moments, like when the Scarlet Witch like descends upon whatever environment she descends upon in whatever movie that is.
I wonder if this is gonna look something like how Hickman did Doom versus Mr. Fantastic, where it's just like they get in like this scape, like, you know, like this maybe pocket dimension between the two of them, and like whoever comes out is gonna be the person that's gonna, it's either gonna be Kang and he gets his way, or it's gonna be Scarlet Witch and she's gonna like reshape whatever the multiverse looks like. So I do think that could be, the only reason I can give them that as like the big sell of, you know, of Secret Wars is just because it's Elizabeth Olsen and Jonathan Majors. Like if this was like,
she proved that she can carry a thing
and get people in seats too.
Yeah,
and I think Jonathan Majors is going to prove that over the next couple of years of his life.
Yeah.
You saw he's in a movie now that people.
He's in a movie.
Oh, I mean, he's in another movie for this year, and he's generating some. You know, I mean, obviously it's going to be next year, like the 2024 Oscars, but he's already generating some buzz because Sundance is going on right now. He's playing a bodybuilder, and the way it's described is like, as if what's that one movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger? The I forget what it's called. Pumping Iron. It's like Pumping Iron meets Taxi Driver. Like the obsession of Taxi Driver and Whiplash mixed with Pumping Iron.
Oh,
so
interesting.
People are calling his performance like just nothing short of incredible. So
cool.
Yeah, glad he's doing roles like that. I mean, like you can sometimes you get lost in the hustle and bustle of doing superhero movies. So I'm glad he's also doing that.
Yeah. Man, it's gonna be you know, like I said, I think, you know, she's Scarlet Witch has always been kind of one of the most intriguing MCU characters to me.
Yep.
I think she definitely has. We talked about Sam earlier not really having an arc. Who's gone on a bigger arc than her in the MCU? Like even when you put her up against like Tony and Steve and Thor, like she's right up there with arcs and compelling ones. So definitely excited to see what the future holds for her and for Agatha or Agnes, whatever the show ends up being. So let's talk about The Last of Us again. Episode 2, Infected. Like I said up top, directed by Neil Druckmann. A few things like just, you know, off the top. I mean, the show, as I think we talked about last week and we predicted, the incredible word of mouth that episode 1 got led episode 2 to getting a massive increase, almost doubled the audience from last week. Episode 1, I think, has crossed now 18 million viewers from where, the premiere date. So more, almost twice as many people have watched episode 1 since than watched it the night it aired.
Right.
So, people are hearing about this show. People are watching the show. I forgot what you said. Oh, you mentioned Invincible earlier about how the show got you into getting the compendium. The same thing is happening for The Last of Us video game. I mean, sales, both physical and digital, are up 200 some odd percent.
I believe it bought the remaster up to the number 6 slot on the PlayStation Store, down from not the dumps, but down from
Where it would be. I mean, it came out months ago.
Yeah, right.
Most people have played it and put it down by now.
Yep.
So,
but now it's the 6th most bought thing in the PlayStation Store right now.
Amazon, I think it's number 1
selling. Yeah,
number 1 selling
game. Yep.
It's them playing kind of 3-dimensional chess. A lot of people were like, well, why do they need to remake part 1 again? It's already been remastered. It's already been re-released. Why are we doing it again? This is why. I mean, maybe they knew something about this show that was going to be like, no, we need a next-gen version of The Last of Us Part 1 for people to jump into, because after they see the show, they're going to want to play the game. And they were right.
Yeah, I've had a couple people that I've known that are doing this. They're watching and they're just like, I have to play this game now. I kind of want to see what's going on, and I'm trying to implore them, keep play. I don't think you need to exclusively do One Piece or not have do at your leisure, but I think you should watch the show as it's coming out week to week, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's just must-watch television at this point. I think episode 2 supplanted that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it that it's a game and you want to play the game now, but man, if I could erase my memory and wipe my mind of everything about the game just so I can enjoy this week to week and genuinely not know what's coming next, I think I would. I think I would actually do that. If you gave me the option, because I mean, this is just super compelling. And I mean, just the moments that even playing the game, I knew were coming. We'll talk about Tess. Everything they've done so far in terms of those emotional moments has been done better in the show, I think.
And I mean, I talked about it last week, and it's this proxy of people, real life, live people. It's a subconscious reaction that we'll have as humans of having more connection that we do. So you have this nigh bulletproof story for one that's just so incredible, and then you put it into live action and have not only that, but an actor that people love right now, and that's in terms of television at the top of the television world too. You mix those two things together. It's a potent mix. Gives me the goosebumps. You didn't think I was gonna get it in this week, but my annual Courage line always wins.
So I mean, this is all positive. It's all trending in a really strong direction, and I think again, it's only going to keep building. I mean, we saw this. House of the Dragon did something similar. Every week was bigger than the last, and I think The Last of Us is going to follow a similar course. I mean, nothing so far. I mean, the reviews, critically, user wise, both have been immensely positive, and more so the user reaction and people reaction has surprised me a bit. I did think there was going to be an element of backlash to this, both from people who play the game and are upset with casting choices or source material.
Casting choice.
Yeah, people who don't like part 2, people who, just don't like the overexposure that this franchise has gotten. So I was expecting some torpedoing, some backlash, but there really hasn't been much of that.
I think that it attributes to one thing. This is just a great show. I think that's it's hard to naysay when something is this great.
Yeah, you look like a crazy person. Yeah, if you're like, nah, this is no good.
Right?
Really?
Yeah. But what makes it good? So let's launch into episode 2. So spoilers from here on out for episode 2, possibly for the game. But
this episode's pretty straightforward, man.
Yeah, it's so they double down with the openings, and I hope they shoot right through episode 9 with this type of thing.
Feels like that's what's coming. It feels like every episode is going to open with a pre-outbreak cold open.
Yep.
And
that's a great a cold open essentially. And I mean, cold as ice opening for both of these. So if episode 1 was scary in the what if, this episode is much scarier in the sense of like the clock is ticking now. Like that's a what if scenario. This is the scenario of the what if just became very true.
Still spooked me though.
It hit you every time because it's just like, again,
this could happen.
Yeah, what we just went through. Like this really,
dude. Yep. This gave me serious COVID vibes when they were talking about like where's the person that bit this other woman.
Can't find.
We don't know. Yep. And I'm like, oh, that's it.
Yep. So how does this episode start?
Masks.
Matt.
We're in Jakarta. So Jakarta was mentioned in passing last episode as part of like the spooky little backdrop of like Jakarta is, panicking, and they're like, "Where's Jakarta? Jakarta, I barely know her." And so that's where we are, and we follow a little scientist lady around. We follow some military folks around into a little cafe, and they corner this nice little old lady, and they're like, "Come with us, help." We find out she's
just eating a salad and some steak, essentially, or some meat.
Yeah, nice, good for her.
No bread. She's on Atkins.
They pull her into a little lab facility thing, and they're like, take a look at this. Take a look at this thing here in this microscope. And we find out she's a fungal expert, like a mycosis.
Yeah, mycosis, yeah.
Whatever the name is. I don't know. I'm not a science guy.
Much like Holden Radcliffe from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. from last week.
Yeah. She looks at the slide, and she's like, what are you showing me here?
What are you showing me?
What is that?
What is that? What are you showing me? The cordyceps grew out of his head. What are you showing me?
Come on. So she looks in the microscope, and she's like, I know what cordyceps is. You dragged me all the way here for this. What are you... idiots.
Yeah.
And they're like, but then she notices something. She's like, why did you use this particular solution? Because you would only use that on a human sample. And they're like, does she know?
Yeah.
And they're like, it is a human sample. And she's like, get lost.
Yeah,
Cordyceps.
They can't survive in humans, stupid.
And then they're like, come this way.
Yeah.
They show her a body of a person who's been shot in the head. And she's like, what is this?
And there's a bite. And the military official tells her before, like, if you start to feel sick, vacate immediately. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So she notices a bite mark on the leg. She opens it up. Very gross.
The body horror in this show is immaculate.
It's awful.
It's awful and immaculate.
Yeah. So she looks, and then she, for some reason, goes into the mouth, and she pulls out those tendrils, and
they're moving.
They're live. They're living. They kind of like do like the like I was expecting to like jump onto like her face mask
and like burrow through and take her.
Yeah, but she gets out of there. She's like, uh-oh, this is terrible. So she's this is a really haunting scene. Really great job by this actress, to through limited movement like portray like genuine fear. And she's sitting there like she's like stone faced. And she's, the soldier's like, so...
It's so incredible.
Like, what can we do? And she's asking questions like, do we know who bit her or what's going on? And they're like, we don't know anything. We know what happened at a flower factory, and there were like 14 people that got infected, and, this, that, and the other thing, and it's real bad. Yeah. Could you give us some tips?
Yeah, there's this little zoom that they do, and it's just zooming in on her, and it cuts back to him to answer the questions, but it keeps zooming in and closing in and closing in, and she's just sitting there, and like you said, like the drop in her, like each question she gets answered is like detrimental and to the point of like there's no she realized like we are doomed, like the world's gonna she realized like the world's about to end. Like we are all the majority of us are about to die. There's no saving us.
Yeah, this show is a masterclass in subtlety. I think as a way to kind of examine these first two episodes. Like nobody's really doing anything bombastic or out of character. Or like they don't feel like real people. Which is great for later on when we'll talk about Ellie, I'm sure. But this is why she's so great, because everyone else is so solemn. Every other character in this is solemn besides like Ellie and Sarah. Like that's pretty much it. And so this guy's like, we need to cook up a vaccine, and she's like, there is no vaccine. Like, and it's not possible.
Yeah, and they alluded to that last week. Like we're finished. Like there's no vaccine. There's nothing to help us through this. It's not a virus. It's fungus. Like, there's nothing to help us through this.
So he's like, what do we do? And she's like, bomb the city.
She just
says bomb.
Yeah. And he's just like, what? And she's just like, bomb this place, the kingdom come. Like, there's no say, like, if you can't find these infected, like, the world's gonna end. Like, try to take us out. You're gonna kill,
millions of people.
You're gonna kill millions of people, but you might save billions of people if they do it. And I'm just gonna assume that they probably waited too long to do it, because they, it's also a skepticism type of thing too. I guarantee you, he probably took that information, and some of them were like, "Get out of here, man! Like, we're fine. Like, well, it couldn't be that bad. It is that bad. It is
just
that
the
bad.
flu.
Yeah, it's just." It's just LSD.
It's fine.
It's fine.
And then we just move right back to 2023, pretty much, because that's what the show has done through the first 2 episodes. Is they do the cold open, and then the cold open directly ties into like the episode. So yeah, we get to Ellie. She's asleeping, and she wakes.
She's in like this like
bed of flowers.
Yeah, and like the sun shining down on her.
Great shot.
There's a butterfly floating around
shot.
her.
She wakes up, and then there's Tess and Joel.
Guns,
stone faced.
Guns trained on her. Don't know what's gonna happen. They don't know what to believe. Like, it's been 20 years of that. You're just gonna tell me magically that there's this girl that's just magically gonna save the entire human race. Like, we've lived through the end. Like, you weren't even born when this happened. Like, we've lived through all this crap.
And I mean, immediately, like, we got a little bit of her last week, but this episode was really the Bella Ramsey showcase. As Ellie, she's great.
Yeah. She's nothing short of the embodiment of the character. She gets the little mannerisms right. She's very crash. She's very snippy. She's very short.
Take no shit from anybody.
Yeah. I love it.
Especially Joel and Tess.
Right.
She can't be.
There's no authority that she feels. Like, she has jurisdiction where Ellie finds jurisdiction wherever Ellie finds herself.
Well, she does kind of have. There's a tinge of entitlement with her, because
she's the golden child.
She's been so protected by the Fireflies that she has no reason to fear Joel and Tess, really. Like, as much as they want to be like, we're gonna kill you if you're infected. Like, Ellie, without making the point, makes the point, like, if I wasn't who I said I was, or who Marlene said I was, we wouldn't even be in this situation. And you start to see, like, she starts to explain what the deal is, and Joel immediately is like, nah, we've seen this before. I've heard this. He even, like, finishes her sentence like, you're working on a vaccine, right? Like,
he probably heard that a lot in the early days. Like,
oh, for sure.
That's probably, like, that first 2 years, he probably heard up and down, like, whatever the U.S. government was at the time, like, we're coming up with a vaccine, and then it goes farther, and then it's like, it goes out, and it's just like, all right, we could be coming up with something, and then that just became the norm.
Yeah, and I mean, it's more deeper depth into Joel's character. Like, he's just over it. He's just desensitized to everything. Like, we got that in the first scene of the time jump when he throws that kid's body in the fire. Like, this guy truly does not have attachment to anything or anybody. But in the meanwhile, Tess is sort of kind of buying what Ellie's selling. She's like, look, worst comes to worst, because Joel wants to go back. Joel's like, we'll take her back to the quarantine zone. We'll just live our lives in Boston. Like, forget the car. We'll find another battery in a car some other way. And Tess is like, we're already out here.
Yeah, might as well.
And she's like, it doesn't matter if she's not who she says she is.
Right.
What matters is the Fireflies believe she is.
Yeah.
So they're going to give us that stuff irregardless if their plan works or not.
Right.
It doesn't matter to us.
Right.
Like, we're just here for the stuff.
Yeah. What the MVP of this episode easily, I mean,
the clickers.
I mean, we'll get there in a second. But the non-infected MVP of this, I guess we're gonna have to do an like the episode 1 infected of the episode was definitely
the guy in the bar,
yeah,
the diner.
The guy that was running through turned into prime Derrick Henry trying to catch them. But this episode, I mean, obviously it's the clickers. But before we get, it's Anna Trav as Tess.
She's great.
She's magnificent in this episode. I love how rugged she is, but she has like this motherly aura that she can't fight. Like, I love how quickly, and this is something that's different from the game, I love how you feel that she takes to Ellie instead of in the game as like you're just
it's
walking.
a little more subdued.
They're just kind of walking with each other, you know, and they're just like, you know, got to get to point A. And to your point of like how this plays out better as a show. Like in the game, like you're walking and then, you know, encounter with zombies, like gamer brain turns on, story brain turns off for a little bit. Like here now, it's just focused on story. Like I love how she can't help but fight it. Like when they're walking on the freeway, like her and Ellie are just having conversation, and like even the way like she's like in close proximity with Ellie, like they'll just stand there, like you can tell like her mother instincts are like kicking in, and like she can't fight it. And
yeah, they have that conversation where she's like, "So how did you even get bit?" And Ellie tells her the story of like, "I snuck into the mall
by myself,"
and Tess is like, that place is totally off limits. Like, how'd you get in there? She's like, you know, I snuck in. Like, I just wanted to see what it was like in there. And Tess kind of goes like, oh, it's pretty badass. Like,
mm-hmm.
like you're kind of awesome, kid.
Right.
And, you know, meanwhile, Joel is just a watching.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, going back to the scene inside, like there's some great back and forth that we don't have to verbatim repeat, but it's great. We're immediately getting into that Joel and Ellie like combativeness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she sees the world one way, he sees the world another way, and that's a natural clash in their personalities, and you get a lot of it in this episode. Like I said, this episode really is the Bella Ramsey showcase. She's so good in this episode. Like her lines, her comebacks are so quick. They're so smart. I mean, it's like, can I have a gun? They're like, absolutely not. And she's like, Jesus, fine, I'll throw a sandwich at him, like whatever. Like, it's really good. And like you said, like she has no patience for these two adults, especially the one who, you know, feels like he doesn't even want to be there. So, you know, eventually they come to an accord, and Joel's like, all right, fine, like we'll keep going. But
like how are we going to get there? And then
which route are we going to take?
And this is where the world gets shown off and how gorgeous they've captured this game and this feel of the world. And
this is one of those things that could have easily gone south is, you know, the environments. How do the environments look? Do they hold up? Do they look good? Do they look practical? Yeah, they do. You can tell that some serious cash was thrown at this show.
You think they use like CGI backgrounds, or do you think they use the soundstage? Because I mean, the soundstage is like the new technology.
I think it's CGI only because a lot of the foreground stuff is practical. They shot a lot of this on location, you know. So I do think like when you look up and you see that iconic image of the two skyscrapers leaning up against each other, I do think it's probably CGI, you know, in a real background. Like there's been set photos of them in the but with the skyline behind them, the real life skyline behind them, and it looks great. It all looks so great. It's one of the best kind of post-apocalyptic worlds I've seen in a movie or TV. You know, I think ironically, maybe not ironically, but like the one that comes to mind for me is like being one of the best is I Am Legend. I think I Am Legend has a really great post-apocalyptic New York in it. And this, you know, by comparison, has a really great post-apocalyptic Boston. I think it looks really good. And they talk about, all right, like we have kind of two routes here. We have one route, the long way, which is safer. You know, there's really no infected. You know, we take that route all the time. Or we can go the short way, which, you know, is littered with infected, like it's dangerous. But...
And then they go into a little bit of world building, and this is where they go. And for the people that have played the game, this is where they go into, you know, a diversion from the game. But I think I texted you immediately and said, oh, I really like this. I don't know how I feel about it comparatively, but just looking at the show itself, if I just want to focus on that, I really like that way that it's kind of how fungus actually work. It's like a hive mind, essentially.
Yeah.
So, and I think that also lends credence to the end of the episode, like the thing that happens where I guess some people are like, this is weird. And I'm like, kind of not though. That kind of makes sense. So, just so the big change is the infected themselves. When we see them, they're like on top of each other and like,
there's a great overview shot of just hundreds of them, assumedly, just kind of chilling, just kind of like hanging over each other.
Right. And how it works is it's kind of like how, like, you know, moss grows or like how fungus grows. Like it's all like they're all like like not physically, not yet, but they're not like physically entangled, but they're all like on top of each other, moving over each other with like slugs essentially. Like it's really gross to look at. So they have like this hive mind essentially. So like the way it's explained, and this is why the tendrils are so important. Like if you step on a tendril across town, it's going to alert the rest of, the hive mind that it's across town. That's where people are. This is more that's what I don't think people are understanding. Like they want as much infection as they can. It's not infection to them. It's just nature to them, like just expansion of their species. So they want as much as possible. So they find something, and something trips something, and they're gonna go to that spot to see if they can get anything from it.
And we get the tie-in to the cold open where Ellie asks like, oh, there's a giant crater, and Ellie asks, oh, this is where they dropped the bombs, and Tess is like, yeah, like they, that's why the quarantine zones are where they are, because that's where the bombs were dropped, and it's where the most infected were killed, and by proxy, where the most people were killed. And, that's why they were able to set up a quarantine zone in Boston, is because it was pretty much like building from the ground up.
Yep.
Like they could afford to build one because, the bombing took there where in some places it might not have. It was, they dropped the bombs and that was that.
Right. You know what I like about this universe? That like we don't hear about New York in this universe, because like who knows what New York on day one would have been like. Like that might have, if we felt that in Texas in this show of like what that like in
a suburb of San Antonio.
Suburb of San, like imagine what New York City or like Los Angeles or Miami would have been like at a situation like that. Like that must have felt like the actual like not that like the universe is ending right now. Like everything is like any worst case scenario like pales in comparison to what we're seeing right now. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then they go into a hotel, and another great. They go in, they have to wade through the water, and Ellie's like, great, again, more great back and forth between Joel and Ellie, where like she says she can't swim, and Joel's like, you're an idiot, like it's not that deep. We get a little Bella Ramsey. Ellie does a little improv play at the front desk, which is very good. Then they again just more great back and forth. Then we get to an impasse. Tess is like, oh no. Like the way is blocked. She goes up and over to investigate. Joel and Ellie are just left sitting there by themselves. Ellie asked a few questions. Where are you from? I'm from Texas. Tess is from Detroit. And that's pretty much all he gives her. Everything else, he's like, nope, not.
You guys a thing? And he's just like, I'm pass. And any other question you're going to ask me is going to be a pass, kid.
Yeah. And then he asks her, like, where'd you learn? You're pretty decent, your way around with that knife, and she goes circus, and he's like, oh
yeah. I forget if he says like, how do you know about this? And she's just like, we have, realize we have to go. Like,
she has books.
Yeah,
like that was the first thing when she was doing the little hotel thing, and he was like, how do you know about hotels? And she's like, we have books. Yeah, like it's called books, idiot.
Yeah, and then he asked her a question later. She's just like, I went to a school now. I didn't go to school.
Yeah, and he's like, because he goes, Tess is from Detroit. It's in Michigan. And she goes, I know where freaking Detroit is. Like, I went to school.
Right.
And then he spins that around on her later, or in that same scene. I forget what she says to him about like, because she asked about the infected.
Oh yeah,
when she asked like, how long do they live, and he goes, I thought you went to school, and she's like, it wasn't a good school.
Yeah.
And then he tells her like, it depends. Some of them live a couple days, some of them live a few months, some of them live decades. It depends. It depends. She mentions earlier, asks about. I've heard rumors of this type of infected, like, are these things real? And, the one that really gets Joel and Tess kind of, like, concerned is when Ellie goes, I heard these ones that, hear like bats and they can't see. And Joel and Tess are like, ooh.
Yeah.
Tess comes back around. She's like, well, we're screwed. Like, we have to go back. This is all blocked off. We have to go the short way through the museum. Dun, dun, dun! So we get to this really creepy museum. Initially, it looks like some good news. The tendrils there are all like rotted over,
right?
Basically.
Yeah, because again, real world stuff like fungus likes to thrive and damp, wet places. That's like a lot of times you'll find infected. They'll be, I mean, in the game, a lot of times, where do you find them? You find them inside. You don't find them outside. You find them inside in like dark corners, especially the stalkers, essentially. They're like it, because I think it's because of where they're at in the stage of infection. Like, they're in between a runner and a clicker. So like, they're like running around, hiding places.
Yeah.
So that's where you're going to find all of them too.
Yeah. And so the fungus here, the tendrils are all bone dry.
Mm-hmm.
Joel makes the remark, so seems like we're all good to go.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna, finally some good luck.
Mm-hmm.
So we get into the museum, and Ellie descends upon a Fedra guard, I think it is.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh no, oh boy."
Yeah.
So
that guy's dead, but he's like freshly dead. And
yeah, this gentleman has been massacred.
Yeah.
He hasn't just been bitten. He hasn't been infected. He's been murdered. He's been torn apart. And Ellie's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing. Like he's not bitten. He's like torn apart. Like what the hell, man? And Joel's like, uh-oh. And immediately
he's like, shh.
Well, he tells her like,
keep your voice.
He goes silent.
Yep.
From here on out, not quiet, silent. And immediately broke that rule because we're going upstairs and the stairs are doing the creaky stairs. It's very spooky.
Oh man,
this is exactly what I said it last week. Like they were gonna make this clicker encounter feel like a big freaking deal. So
the horror elements in this show are just some of the best you can ask for in television. It's there's so much intensity in the sequence itself. Like you feel like just uneasy just from the second they step into any sort of dark, and it's a lot of that goes down to the camera work, like holding the camera, like doing the you shouldn't call it shaky cam, but like the handheld action, like it makes it feel more realistic, because like if the camera turns, it's like my eyes are turning, like what, so I'm like gonna succumb to whatever happens when the camera turns.
And the cool thing about having Neil Druckmann in particular direct this episode is he knows how to direct these combat quote-unquote sequences. You see a lot of kind of video game kind of spatial awareness stuff going on in this sequence with the clickers. Like it's really good. But before we get to the clickers proper, we hear them. That now what is famous to gamers is now probably famous to just people who have now watched the show, that
yeah.
And then the screech of the clicker, and it takes a while to see them. You hear them for a few minutes, and then Joel does and then you see it kind of saunter by, and they're kind of like wiggly, wobbly, kind of almost dance-like kind of motion, and then Joel mouths to her like they can't see, but they can hear, and the clicker rounds the corner, and Ellie does like a gasp, and the clicker hears it, and it's on.
Yep. What's awesome about this is that apparently the clickers from this there's two clickers. The clickers from this episode were like fans of the games that were actors, and they kind of already had like some prerequisites going in, which I think is really cool. So even down to
this is practical.
Yeah,
these clickers are all practical.
Yeah, they just gloss them up a little bit in post, but like these are actual people doing these movements too. So. And
they got the voice actors from the game to do the sounds, and it's terrifying. As authentic as it gets.
Yeah.
I said this, just talking to people about this, I said, seeing this in live action instantly vaults the clickers into like top 3 infected creature designs in all of zombie media. I would say these things are terrifying.
Yeah.
More so than any Walking Dead zombie. More so than any.
Well, I mean, the Walking Dead zombies are repetitive, are they not?
There's really nothing to them.
Yeah.
This is a unique looking creature, and that's what this universe has going for it. Like everything about the zombie stuff, quote unquote, is wholly unique to The Last of Us.
Yeah. But there's it's the genius of how you open the cold opens of these episodes, make it even more terrifying, because like these are people, like, you know what I mean? Like these are actual people that got to this point just from, prolonged time of just being, the fungus just growing from.
And man, that first jump scare is great when the clicker turns and the light is right in its face, and you see just how grotesque it is. And yeah, it's on. It gets real tense real quick. a really great sequence. You see how durable they are. Joel immediately sprays it with the assault rifle.
And it's not like
it doesn't take.
It's not like video game durable. It's durable because of how long the infection. Like they even shoot one in the head and like just a piece because it's like literally like fungus growing out, so it's like hardened and thick and it can't.
It's like armor almost.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and these things are immediately presented as a threat because you're built into this story with Joel and Tess that like they've been doing this for X amount of years. They're
Terrified.
They're fairly experienced with the infected, and they do not want to mess with these things. Like they're both terrified of the clickers, and for good reason.
Right. So Tess gets separated from them. So one of
Tess and Ellie,
get separated. Joel is like
scuffling.
Man, yeah, he's grappling with one of them. Puts two in the stomach, doesn't work. I love when that bit where he's trying to reload the gun and he's doing it silently, and then he takes the flashlight and he flashes around the corner. It's just right in the right on its face. And
that's the thing that cats do. Like lights on it, and it's like it's staying there. Lights off it, and then lights back on again, and it's like right there. Yeah, it's really good, man. It's one of the most intense kind of infected sequences in anything in any TV show. It's really, 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 really good. Then he does like a bit of a run. He finds Ellie, and then, again, Tess is off screen with this other one, and Joel finally is able to put this thing down. The first one, then the second one rears up, and then Tess shows up with an axe.
Because in the head, it's still kicking.
Yep. And then I think
me personally, if I was playing the game, it would have been done by then.
Yeah, Joel should have crafted a shiv or something.
He didn't have enough materials yet.
So yeah, Tess hits this other one with an axe, and then it's Joel that shoots it, or Tess. One of them shoots it in the head, puts it down for good. They're like, "Whew, Jesus Christ!" And then lo and behold, Ellie gets bitten again, and she's like, classic, tension deflating Ellie when she's like, oh, well, if it was going to happen to any of us, it might as well have happened to me. And then that's kind of like another notch in the belt of like, oh, she might be for real here.
Yeah. Because what changes from the game is like Joel in the game, it's the spores immediately. Joel's like, how are you breathing in this stuff? And like, even seeing the bite from before, Joel's like, no, like, I still don't believe this. But like the second one, he's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, like.
And how like flippant she is about it. Like she's clearly not making it up.
Right.
Like, if she got bit again and she's like,
Yeah.
So they get outside and
they do the thing from the game.
Yeah, this is pretty much one beat for beat shot from the game. But before that, Tess has been injured. Her ankle's been messed up, and something shifts in her. Her attitude becomes very frantic,
fast paced.
She gets very snippy with Joel because he's like, I knew this was gonna happen, like everything always goes wrong, and she's like, hey, can we just like have this one thing? Like,
why are you so like, can we win? Like, is this
we survived, like we got out of that, like, didn't we? Like, can you just knock it off? And she's getting very quick with him in a way that she's always been kind of like fu standoffish kind of, but like not really with him.
Joel, no, she's like the only person she's not like that with.
Yeah, so she's getting very animated, and you could pass that off as like, oh well, they just had this really intense kind of like encounter, and then Ellie goes to walk across the roof, and Joel's like, hey man, that's scary, and she's like, no, that back there was scary. This is just wood.
Right.
She continues to be incredible, and then this is an exact recreation from the game where Joel and Ellie kind of stare at the Capitol building, and the sun is rising or setting, unclear. And she it would be setting because,
or it would be rising because they just came out of the morning. No.
Yeah, it'd be setting.
Because they did have the whole day. Oh yeah,
they started in daylight.
Because when you're playing the game, it's very much of like time just passes and you don't really feel it. But yeah, that's right. It's setting because they had to take. It's not like the game where it feels like 20 minutes and then you're like across like 3 cities. Like it's like actually they need a day.
And he goes, "Well, is this everything you hoped for?" And she goes, "The jury's still out, but you can't deny that view." Again, just that's dialogue ripped straight from the game, and
it just hits so hard.
Yeah,
seeing it real. Yeah,
And again, you get to see that dichotomy in their personalities. Like, she sees the bright side of everything. She sees the best in things in this awful world. Like, she hasn't been exposed to these horrible things that he has, and she just is like, yeah, like, independent of our mission, like, this is just a great view. Like, this is just...
And I think the big thing for her is she deals with her trauma differently than... I think that's how she deals with her trauma. It's like those quick, snippy attitude. You know, she deals with it that way, and Joel is closed. Like, his emotion is closed for... Yeah, his emotion is closed for... But it's funny, as much as, you know, how this infection grows, it's like the infection of loss grew in Joel for 20 years, and, like, it hardened him, just like it hardens a clicker after that amount of time.
Yeah, and, you know, again, Ellie walks forward, and then Joel kind of stops, and Tess is like, hey, like, let's go.
Let's go.
He looks at his watch. You know, symbolism there, obviously, is not lost on anyone. They walk up to this Capitol building, and interestingly enough, no fireflies to be had.
Yep.
So they're like, this, I would have thought we'd seen some fireflies by now.
Yep. So they walk... I like how they do it too. Like, Tess, like, grabs Ellie and walks right through the door, and Tess is like, they have to have a map. Like, and they're like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on?
We gotta go inside.
Yep.
Like, Joel's investigating the truck, you know, trying to, because that's the truck presumably that they're supposed to take, you know, from there. That was the deal. And so he's investigating that, and Tess immediately goes inside with Ellie. She's like, let's go. Maybe they're inside. And they get inside, and there's heaps of dead fireflies in there.
You found out one of them turned, and then some more of them turned, and then there was a firefight mixed with infected. Everybody's dead in there.
Yep. As, you know, presumably that's how the outbreak pretty much worked. We saw a little bit of that in Texas, but, like, people started getting infected. People started killing each other. Infected were killing people. People were killing other people. Like, that's a microcosm of what happened, basically. Like, one person turns, and it ends up in 10 people dead. So Tess is freaking out at this point. Yeah.
And, like, again, if you haven't played, you're probably like, what? It's like, now you can start to feel like, oh, shoot. Like, it happened.
And Joel's like, what are we doing? Like, what is the deal? Like, why are you so, like, frantic about the mission all of a sudden instead of our return on investment? And then
Ellie does the thing she does, and she's just like,
holy shit.
She's infected. And Joel's like, show it to me. And again, he's apprehensive. He, like, she goes, and she goes to step to him, and he takes a step back, and she's just like, oops, right?
He doesn't react in the way that you'd expect somebody who cares about somebody to react. Immediately upon finding out she's infected, he kind of goes into that survivalist mode. Like, we gotta get out of here. Like, you're infected. Like, that's it.
Right.
You know? And he's like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, mission's over.
Yep. And then Anna Torv, Torv puts in her Emmy performance right here.
Yeah, she asked Ellie, like, okay, what was the plan? What were the Fireflies going to do with you? And she's like, I don't really know that much. Like, it was just get me here.
Yeah, she's just like,
take me out west.
Yeah, they didn't tell me any you know, minutia of the plan. I was just told I'm going out west. That's it.
And then Tess turns to Joel, and she's like, you have to take her.
Gotta finish this. Like, this is for the first... We're bad people. Like, this is for the first time, like, we can do some good. Like, we find
out a lot of Joel and Tess in that moment. Like,
say the line she gives is just
she feels amazing. You know, and she wants she wants redemption.
Yep.
She wants them to redeem themselves, and she says, I've never asked you for anything, not even to feel the way that I felt. So you... In that one, it's perfect.
You've that was some bars that she was spitting.
It's wonderful writing because it says a lot with little words. It tells you that yes, they were in some sort of relationship, but clearly she was putting more into it than Joel was. Clearly that wall was there, even between he and Tess. That wall was there, and you get that just with that one little line when she's like, "I've never asked you for anything, not even to feel the same way that I felt." That tells you everything about their relationship that we may not have seen. It tells you everything. And then, you know, Joel steps on one of those tendrils and it alerts the horde that they saw earlier. So now clock's ticking, basically. And Tess tells her, you have to get her out of here. You have to finish this.
She's just like, look, I'm dying and she's fine. Like, she got bit like
3 weeks ago.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. And then she just got bit like 20 minutes ago, and look at her and look at me, like I'm going, like this is it for me, like I'm about to die, like this is real.
Yes.
Oh, the line she gives, you just like shut up and listen, like that's such great acting by her too. She's just like shut up, like while it's so difficult, like that's why I revere, like just to bring something like the rooftop scene with John Bernthal and Charlie Cox is just, I think, some of the pinnacle of acting you can find, because it's so difficult to talk over somebody. So like Pedro Pascal tries to like interject, and she's just like, shut up and listen to me. Like, I don't have any time left. Like, I love how broad it's like the glimmer of hope that this universe has. Like, and amongst all the crap that happens and all the, you know, like the dreary nature, there's just this glimmer of hope. And like, I love how like, it's very, you know, tailored towards them, their mission, and then like it immediately becomes broad. Essentially, when she finds out, she's like, you legitimately saved the human race right now. Like, you need to do, I don't care how you felt about anything, I don't care you need to do this. Like, you just got the golden egg right here, like go do it. Like, I don't really care.
You know, the wonderful sublayer under that is, you know, her mindset isn't even on that. Her mindset is on redemption,
right,
for themselves. You know, it's not even like a grand cause of being like, we could be the ones to save humanity. It's just like, we can finally do something right for once. Like, we can do something good.
Oh, I love what she says too. Instead of like, this is real, she says, Joel, she's real. Like, as if she's like this deity. Like, she's real. Like, we're looking at like our savior right here. Like, you don't have Joel, I'm never asking you to do like anything like this again. Like, you need to do, like, there's not an ask in this. Like, you have to do this.
And, you know, he doesn't answer her. He hears the infected coming, and he grabs Ellie and
But also, you know what he hears? Or you know what he sees? He sees a girl that he, like, as much as it's like the survival, like, what's the other piece of the survivalist nature? It's like protecting your family and your horde and your pack. Like, that's immediately what he does.
This family is our fortress.
This family is our fortress. I see you. Go see Avatar, and not just because, you know, we want this movie to make more money. Like, there's genuinely an incredible, like, such an emotional family drama in there. Why would they do that in that movie? Man.
And Ellie is resisting. She's like, we can't leave her. And Joel, again...
Joel just grabs her and goes. Yeah.
That's it. And they get out, and here come the infected. They come in, and then Tess is she spills over oil barrels.
And some grenades.
And she's trying to light this lighter, and it won't freaking light, as all lighters do in these tense situations in movies. It won't light, and this one infected kind of like turns and looks at her and walks over to her, and at this point, like, the infection is already starting to take over her, so that's why she's kind of like in this trance almost. And then infected gets real close to her. The tendrils come out and gets in her. It gets in her.
Her pupils like open wide up, and it's just like it's almost over. And then
it's like the symbolism, like kiss of death, basically, is what this is.
Yep.
And she finally gets the thing to light, drops it. Big kaboom, kablam, goes the text on the comic book panel. Big kablam, and you know, it's a really great end moment where Joel just keeps a walking, and Ellie stops and turns, and like you feel like you going back to like how she uses that kind of quippiness and all that stuff to like masquerade her trauma. Like, this is the first time you see her like vulnerable. Like, she looks back and you can tell she's like heartbroken. Because
who was the first mother figure to her? So it's her mother. Tess was the first.
Yeah, because Marlene really wasn't.
Marlene was, I mean, obviously Marlene has a lot more, but like, for the moment, Marlene was very like transactional in that sense, and like, but Tess was like, you know, asking about her life, and like, there's just these little moments that Bella Ramsey and Anna Tarv were kind of had together, which it just sold me immediately. Like that, you know, again, redemption. I think that's if I were to put a label on Tessa's character, that's what it is, and that's what her arc in this, and you know, her brief arc was. That's why it was short, but it was very potent, you know, due to that fact.
Yeah, it's incredible, an incredible performance. Again, going back to Nico Parker last week, it is so tough for an actor or actress to get a character across in such a short amount of time. I mean, Nico Parker had 30 minutes to do it, and Tess had 45, 50 minutes total between the second half of last episode and this one. And again, nailed it again. Just these short moments and able to pack so much character into those moments, just incredible. And then that's how the episode ends, and on to Bill and Frank's, as Tess says. So we've heard Bill and Frank mentioned a couple times now, so obviously people that Joel and Tess run with. So we'll see where that goes. When we got a little preview of Bill and Frank, and for next week's episode, Bill, definitely played by Nick Offerman, and definitely seems like a very hardcore survivalist. So we'll see how their dynamic is when Joel brings this child. And you get a little bit of Bill's character when Tess is like, you have to take her there, and Joel says he's not gonna accept her. Like, he won't welcome her. Like, it's not gonna happen. Like, you know how Bill is.
And Tess immediately, I don't care how you do it. I don't care what you gotta do.
She's like, convince him.
You convince him. You're gonna convince him.
So we'll see. I'm super excited for that. It's going to be another long one. Another 80+ minute episode.
People are heralding this episode. Like, Troy Baker said it. The people that have, I think the way, like, some, outlets have seen the whole season, some critics have seen the first 4. Apparently this episode is like, people are calling this like the crowning achievement of television for 2023. Like, this episode is going to be everything. So, I just know this dynamic between Bill and Frank is just the expansion. This is going to be the first big expansion piece, if I'm not incorrect about this, of the show from the game, like, expanding upon somebody's backstory versus like, we just get told what's happened. Or, as for instance, the first episode, we saw that in the game, like, it's pretty played out, pretty much the same. But this is going to be the first like dive into characters that were just Bill comes in and then Bill's out of the narrative. Like, this is like actually like we're gonna
and Frank's not even there in the game. He's mentioned.
He's a Hawaiian shirt that's hanging from a ceiling.
He's mentioned, so he's not even. You don't even see Frank. You don't get to see their dynamic. Their dynamic is told to us. Where in this next episode, we're going to see Bill and Frank proper. And who knows? It definitely seems like Frank is very much there when Joel gets to town. So we'll see what happens. Super excited.
Me too.
And that's the second episode of The Last of Us. It was just as good as the first episode. I can't even pick which one I like better. They were both super impressive.
I don't even really want to get into that too much. I just want to keep enjoying this, man.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's really good. So that being said, we're going to close the book on that. We'll probably end up doing this again next week. If episode 3 is as good as people say, we'll probably end up dedicating another episode to this. So hopefully you guys aren't sick of hearing us talk about The Last of Us.
We don't even care if you're sick of hearing.
True, because it's our podcast. Yes, because we've talked about the game. We've talked about, pre-release for this show. We talked about the pilot last week. We talked about episode 2. We'll probably end up talking about episode 3 next week because, it's been, I've been, like I said last week, I was expecting good things, but what I've been getting is more than I could have even thought. As someone like who loves the games and really had high hopes and expectations for the show, those expectations have been exceeded. So I can't wait.
Me neither.
What have you been working on? What movie did you watch?
What's the last movie I talked about? Did I talk about The Whale last week?
No,
I don't think I did. Yeah, so I went out to the theater. I saw Darren Aronofsky's The Whale with Brandon Fraser. I mean, probably the most anticipated performance of the year, just from the first trailer, along with, I think Elvis had a little bit more word of mouth when it came out versus like, as soon as people saw the trailer for The Whale, like early in 2022, they were like, okay, Brandon Fraser's back and he's back with something to prove. So, saw that. I'm on the board. I'm on board. I'm on the train. You're
putting that there?
Yeah, this is the best performance of the year in the male category. I still have high hopes that the best overall performance is Cate Blanchett as Lydia Tarr in Tar. Just based off what people are saying, I'm going to watch that movie within the next, I think it's coming to Paramount Plus in the next 5 days or something like that. So I'm going to watch that in that time. But man, if Brendan Fraser doesn't capture you emotionally. So basically this premise is it's based off a play, and this movie, he was trying to make this movie since 2010. Like, this movie had been kind of in the works for a while, and I think the biggest tackle for him was getting the right person, and that's what he said. That's what Darren Aronofsky said. So he finds Brandon Fraser in 2020, I believe, and the rest is kind of history from there. But basically, it's this guy named Charlie. He's a online college professor, and he had a partner, and he loses that partner, and then the only way that he saw it fit to cope is, by eating. And then he kind of got to 600 pounds. So basically where the story starts out is he's dying, essentially. Like his weight got the best of him. He's having cardiovascular failure now. And basically he kind of wants to reconnect with his daughter before he dies. So this just in world feel and kind of, setting, it's very, concealed to his apartment, essentially, because it is based off of a play. So plays are very, location singular. But what Aronofsky's kind of able to capture, and what he does really well, is kind of, seeing how heartbreaking this is. Like, it's a very visceral movie to watch, like, especially, some of these sequences in here, but Brandon Fraser's nothing short of, tremendous in here. It's just, you can't help but feel emotional. And like, there's this way this movie kind of like lulls you into like these bits of happiness. And I think that's the point about somebody like Charlie. Like, there's a good person trapped in there. I mean, there's a big thing that he does that's, essentially wrong. I mean, it's like a morality debate, I guess, but there's something that's quote unquote wrong that he does in his life that has to do, with his family. And coming off of that, just Brandon Fraser's able to capture like that same charm that he still had, even if he's 600 pounds. He's just like, a lot of people don't like to look at him or anything like that too. And kind of going through, the trials and tribulations of the end of your life mixed with that. Like, what do you do in the end of your life? Do you give up? Do you kind of maybe practice somebody else to kind of keep going and give them some lessons? And that's what he does. Sadie Sink's also really good here. Like, you can tell, like, she's got a career ahead of her that's outside of Stranger Things that's going to be quite special too. So that performance is, it's inspiring, to say the least. And while this movie's not perfect, because there's issues around, I don't, I mean, like we always say, the thing I like about us is, like, we don't really focus, as much as some people would probably prefer us to focus on the bad. I just don't see the point. Like, yeah. I really don't. Like, why not focus on the good and the what is? And what is a great performance and an emotional performance. Like, I heard people like sniffling in the, like, it's a tough watch. Like, that once that movie kicks into the second act, like, you're like on this emotional train. You can't get off of it. Like, Aronofsky like denies to let you go. Like, he won't let you go. So really enjoyed that. And then I don't know if I talked about Old Country for No Men. I don't think I did.
No Country for Old Men, you mean?
Yep, that's exactly what I said. No Men for the Old Country.
You actually saw the sequel.
Yeah, no.
Old Country for No Men.
Yeah. It's basically The Handmaid's Tale, but in ancient times. But so, I mean,
one of the greatest movies ever made.
I agree. Yeah. It's the 2007 debate between was it this or was it There Will Be Blood? Like, imagine like the two titans going up against each other. Like, that's essentially what that was. But this movie's got this mundanity that all the Coen brothers movies have. Like, there's comedy bits, but you want to talk about the specter that, haunts a town, with Anton Segura played by Javier Bardem, like, what I think is, such an incredible performance. I think I even talked about it when we talked about The Dark Knight, or when you guys will never really hear that episode, is how I feel like maybe some things were pulled from that to go into Heath Ledger's performance too, because of how he just feels like this, like, he doesn't feel real. Like, he feels like just like, the specter that's moving throughout the town that's just there for, an engine of chaos or order, essentially. Mm-hmm. I kind of like the infusion of not John Bernthal. I got John Bernthal in mind. Of why can't I remember Thanos' name?
Josh Brolin.
Why can't I remember Josh Brolin's name? I love how he's like this, like, last-legged gunslinger, essentially. That's like, I mean, the whole premise of this movie and kind of the whole theme is like chance. Like, mm-hmm. he says it to everybody. He's like, everybody calls him like Anton, like, weird when they have the encounters, like this weird. He's just like, I wouldn't be here without chance. Like, everything's based off the chance. Like, he has the coin flip that like Harvey Dent has, and like he tells people like, you know, heads or tails. It's just like, why does this matter to anything? Like, it didn't matter that I came in here without chance. Like, so now your life has always been about chance. Like, you might walk down the road one day and run into me and die because I decided to kill you, but that's based off a chance that you were the person on that road that day. So, and then I like how what kind of, you know, seals it is like this. It's like the monologues that Tommy Lee Jones has in this movie, like they're just thought-provoking monologues that, like, you know, spray this, like, you know, this kind of what's the best word to use for this? They kind of spray this like finality over it because again, it kind of plays back into the title, like No Country for Old Men, and I definitely feel like it's a commentary on like this new wave of criminal that's like around, like, you know, these psychopaths essentially too, versus like, you know, somebody might go rob a convenience store, but now there's like people that like have means to kill people by like, you know, these truly horrific means, and like, how can somebody like me keep up? And like, one of the questions he gets asked in the movie is just like, why'd you decide to retire? He's like, I can't keep up with this anymore. Like, I can't, like, the monologue he has at the beginning of the movie where he talks about like how the old sheriff didn't even have a gun with him when he used to go into the situations, and then it plays like when he goes to find Anton and like he pulls out his gun, but like you can feel like he never has really had to use this thing like that much in his career before. So, I mean, again, one of the more perfect movies that you can find of all time. Somebody should do a case study on 2007 and like how the Academy picked between, you know, in my personal opinion, one of the greatest performances of all time with Daniel Day-Lewis as in There Will Be Blood, in between this movie. I mean, it's really a toss-up. It's a toss-up.
It's still a toss-up.
It's still a toss-up.
All these years later.
Yep, it's still a toss-up.
The debate still hasn't been settled.
What game have you played?
So I have, again, I mentioned last week that I was on my story mode driven decision games. So I finished through Heavy Rain. It was good. That game still has that early 2000s feel to it. Controls are a little wonky, but I moved on to Quantic Dream's latest game that came out a few years ago, Detroit Become Human. And this was such a departure from Heavy Rain in the best way. They spent some money, got some prominent actors. Clancy Brown is in this.
Clancy Brown's in Invincible.
He is.
When we were talking about Invincible, I was going through the cast list, or the voice list.
It's crazy.
Astronomical. But continue.
Yeah. Jesse Williams is kind of like the spearhead of this. It takes a lot of iRobot-isms. It's a game about... it focuses on 3 androids in a future Detroit where kind of androids have taken over like the day-to-day. That says like U.S. unemployment's up to like 33% because androids are taking like convenience roles and convenience store roles and house roles and taxis and buses. And you start with these 3 androids, Connor, Marcus, and Kara, and they all have different kind of stories. Marcus is a android in service to a renowned painter who is is telling Marcus like he's old and he has, I believe it's Alzheimer's. It's not quite clear what his illness is, but he's ill and he's kind of prepping Marcus for life without him. And this is a universe where androids are subservient to humans. Whatever humans say, androids do. They don't have any free will of their own. But Carl, who the painter is, kind of explained to Marcus like, you're going to have to decide one day who you're going to be. Like, he's promoting this idea of free will. He encourages Marcus to paint, to use his imagination to paint things instead of just recreating what he sees. And that's sublet with Connor, the other android who works for the police department, who is investigating deviant androids. So you start the game as Connor in a hostage negotiation with a deviant android who has obtained free will through means and has kidnapped a young girl that was in the family, and you have to, as Connor, try to get this android to literally step off the ledge because deviancy is becoming common in androids. And that's the whole crux of the game is becoming human as Marcus, Kara, and Connor. Kara is kind of like a housemaid android who is put into this home of an abusive father to his daughter, and her trigger for becoming a deviant is having enough of the witnessing abuse of this man and his daughter, and she absconds with the daughter and goes on, an adventure to try to escape, being being an android and trying to get away and be a mother, basically, which is a concept foreign to androids. It's really interesting. It's a really, it's one of those kind of in that Walking Dead vein of like certain decisions will really punch you in the gut.
Yep.
Right. And it's a really interesting concept. Yeah. Like I said, it's straight from that iRobot vein of free will and what does that mean?
Right. And stories like that, I feel like, are becoming more prevalent with the, I feel like everybody sees in the news ever so often, especially within like the last couple of years, like, these robot, like sentience, like scientists starting to mess around with it. And I mean, 3 projects off the top of my head that I can think about like that is, the Blade Runner franchise deals with that a lot.
This game is very Blade Runner.
Yeah. Like this idea with replicants and kind of, what 49 revolutionizes. I think Ridley sets up the world, but 49, doubles down on the, on the ideologies of the dynamic between, because what Ryan Gosling's, like what his character essentially is just like, I'm a real boy. And then like, but it doesn't matter. Like nothing actually really matters. Like even to humans, like nothing really matters. Like our lives are like, they're just pieces in like this big, like Yggdrasil-esque world. Like this doesn't matter that you have all these things if you're a human or not human. And then another one that was recent that, caught me by ultimate surprise from early last year was After Yang, a film that with Colin Farrell and early, and it was just like the year of Colin Farrell. Essentially, it started with After Yang, got a lot of buzz from their performances, but I believe it's from these texts that the director Kokonada kind of took because he's a historian for film, and it's kind of this idea of like basically for that it's like it's the future and they get this they get a son, but the son's an android, and it's like it's like a transitional robot for their adoptive Chinese daughter, and kind of like is he just like his, and it's got a lot to do with memory. Like it's not the idea is like is he sentient or not, like what is he taking like from all these things, like is he taking like what's been told, or is he feeling, because you find out later that he has he had a relationship with a girl, like with a real girl, and it's just like they didn't know that before, and she did, and I think she finds out after, but it doesn't really matter. Like love is kind of love at that point too. So all these, and then Ex Machina from 2014 from Alex Garland. I mean, that's a big time one in the recent memory of like this idea of like. I think that might be the best example for this of like, getting from that one point and kind of like the sentience keeps rising and rising and rising, and not like a Terminator-esque way of like, it's just what's more evil, the human or the machine? Like, I think that movie tackles that quite a bit.
Yeah, too. That's exactly what Detroit does. Like you literally as these 3 androids have to make decisions. Like, are you going to remain kind of like I think the struggle is most notable in Connor because he's an android that is designed to hunt other deviant androids. So you have
like Kay was in Blade Runner.
Connor is very Blade Runner. Like that character arc is very like he hooks up with Clancy Brown's character, who's a detective in the police force who hates androids, and they establish a bond. And like the penultimate decision with Connor is like, do you continue on this path of hunting deviants, or do you become a deviant yourself? And it's really good. If you have PlayStation Plus, it is, and I think if you have PlayStation Plus and you're on PS5, it's part of that collection of PlayStation classics that's free. So you can just download it and play it. Super recommend it. And then I think I'm ready to dive into Midnight Suns.
Okay.
I think I'm ready to make that commitment. The Deadpool trailer for Midnight Suns just came out. Nolan North returns to reprise the role from the Deadpool video game. I mean, it's just I really like the idea of this game. The more I see about it, the story looks super interesting. It's a unique take on the kind of mystical side of the Marvel Universe, which rarely gets explored, as we talked about earlier with Agatha, Coven of Chaos. A lot of characters that don't get a lot of play in video games in particular are kind of forefront in this. Blade, voiced by Michael J. White, who I mentioned earlier. Nico Minoru is a pretty important character, voiced by the same actress who plays her in Runaways. Interesting, right?
Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that she might show up in this Coven of Chaos show.
Yep. Robbie Reyes, Ghost Rider, is represented.
Yep.
Robbie Reyes and Johnny Blaze are both represented in this game. And then you have your main stage. You have your Tony Starks, your Captain Americas. Yuri Lowenthal reprises the role of Spider-Man. Magic of the X-Men is in this game.
Colossus's baby sister.
Colossus's sister.
Rogue recommendation for something. If you want to read some really good X-Men and like at a jump, like a nice jumping off port, as much as we don't like Joss Whedon, he did a really good run on the X-Men. I think it was 2005. It's the art, John Cassidy's art. It's amazing, but it's got a lot of Colossus focus in there too. That's why I thought about that. So.
Yeah. So Magic. Who else is in this? Josh Keaton of Spider-Man fame voices Iron Man in this. Doctor Strange is in this.
Yep. Cannot have Doctor Strange in there.
The villain lineup, as far as I know, as far as I've seen, is Lilith, the demon goddess.
Do you think that's who? I was thinking about this. You think that's who Aubrey Plaza can be playing?
Lilith?
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
That'd be cool. You have your main player character who is the daughter or son of Lilith. It's your choice. You can create your own character, and they're kind of like the protagonist insert. Agatha Harkness is in this. Crossbones, Venom. DLC characters off the top of my mind are Venom, Deadpool, Storm, and Morbius.
They knew what they were doing.
Wolverine is in this, voiced by the iconic Steve Blum. Returns to that role. So impressive voice cast. It's a turn-based strategy RPG. If that's your vibe. So I think I'm ready. I'm ready to make the commitment. I was skeptical of this game, but then all I keep hearing is, "No, Midnight Suns is really great. It's really great." So I think I'm ready to dive in to experience hopefully another good Marvel thing. In the wake of Avengers being ended.
Did we talk about that?
No, I think we talked about it off air.
Yeah. So just so you go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So the Avengers game, developed by Crystal Dynamics, published by Square Enix, has announced they are officially closing their doors on this live service game in late September. So March 31st will serve as like the final update, where they're going to make all the skins and cosmetics and everything free. Guys probably could have just done that from the beginning, but what do I know?
It's almost like you should be able to earn it, and maybe they should have invested more into story.
Yep. And then
they should have played it more like Ghost of Tsushima and done like a story.
And then September 26th, the servers...
Isn't that Outbreak Day?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Day. The servers will be shut down. You won't be able to access the multiplayer elements. You'll still be able to access the single-player campaign and all the DLCs if you purchase them before that September date, which, interestingly enough, I think is actually a good idea. Like, if you do want to dive into this game and just experience what for my money is a pretty good story. I
like the beginning of I think the story gets a little bit off the rails once it starts to go, like, as soon as you get Captain America back from the moon, like... I feel like they don't understand. I think they don't know what to do because of how many characters they have. And, like, I feel like they kind of get confused as to, like, where this story should go. Because, like, you're spending a lot of time with Kamala. And then, like, they forget, like, the actual Avengers are there. And, like, some of the Avengers don't even get, like, usage. Like, they feel like they just come out of left field. Like, Ex Machinas get thrown in. So,
I do feel like, potentially when that last update drops, they'll probably do a heavy price slash. Probably shorten it to like, I don't know, $20.
Yeah.
It might be worth picking up, if you can get the DLCs with it. The Hawkeye DLC is pretty interesting. The Black Panther DLC is pretty interesting. Just a wasted opportunity. This game was. It has I talked about the Midnight Suns voice cast. The Avengers voice cast is absolutely stellar.
Yeah, it's wild how good it is.
You talk about the titans of voice casting for the last 5 to 10 years of gaming. They're all here. Troy Baker, Nolan North, Christopher Judge plays T'Challa, and just an incredible voice cast on just a bad execution of a game.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's the reason why my ears are perked up and alarmed for the Justice League Kills the Suicide Squad game, which has been revealed as being a live service kind of thing.
Take the microtransactions away from the games.
In the mold of both Avengers and Gotham Knights, Suicide Squad is going to take elements of that. But
between Jedi Fallen Order and between Battlefront, which one's better received?
Right.
And between
it's weird how this keeps happening.
And between the Avengers and between Guardians of the Galaxy, which one's better received? Which of those games has microtransactions? Mm-hmm. Battlefront and the Avengers. Which one just has a story where you play and you start to fall in love and cling on to these characters?
This live service thing does not work with these types of games. I mean, you want to do it with Fortnite, you want to do it with Overwatch. Fine.
Yeah.
Like, those are first-person shooters,
right, yep.
And they're not... The things that you're buying are not necessarily, like, buffs for characters. It's just skins or whatever. Like, it doesn't affect, like, core gameplay. Mm-hmm. But what Avengers was doing, like, they were locking, like, resources behind microtransactions and things like upgrade your characters and, Yeah,
you made the point that, like, we would play and, like... somebody would be infinitely better, and then what would happen? The skill-based matchmaking would happen, and you either would take the lowest character, so you're just running through everything, or a lot of the times it would take the highest character, and somebody was, a big gap in between, and it would be like, this is way too difficult to kind of, get after. Like, I mean, a game like Ghost of Tsushima is a great example of how you integrate multiplayer and, like, how you have fun with the multiplayer, like, yes, they were having, yes, it's a lot of skill-based things and, like, you kind of grow with the game, but if you play through the whole campaign, you can kind of go through there. They add different, elements to the samurai journey, too, and then nothing's transactional. Like, the more you play, the more you get rewarded, and then the better that you kind of get. And then there's, like, multiplayer story missions that you do with another person to make sure that you get to a certain level before you jump into the other stuff.
Yeah, the Avengers game just attacked things in just the wrong way. That's all you can say.
The back half of the story is just completely a mess. The gameplay is it's glitchy. It doesn't feel finished. Characters feel repetitive. Like, and
the world, as far as, like, the enemies and all that, just are not interesting enough to warrant that gameplay loop. No. Like, to go on and, like, I have to do another thing where I run to a thing, run into a base and fight Taskmaster at the end, or
or more aim bots,
aim robots. I mean, they did a couple interesting things with the DLCs with Claw, with Maestro. So those were some interesting things, but they had to shoehorn in, like, story elements to be like, explain why you're fighting Maestro again.
Right. And then, one of the big things for me is how this feels like. It felt like I felt like this game should have came out in, like, 2014 after the first Avengers came out, because this is genuinely what this feels like, is just even down to Bruce is, like, Bruce, played by
Troy Baker.
Troy Baker, is essentially just playing MCU Bruce. Like, Thor feels like like Chris Hemsworth. Like, they all feel like just the movie versions of them, like, of all of them. Like, they don't have any, like, delineations between any of them, too, which is, like, unfortunate.
There's some interesting threads in there. Like, Tony's kind of arc is kind of interesting, where, like, it's, like, Ultron adjacent. Like, he feels responsible for what happens on A-Day, but he's, misdirecting his anger at Bruce, who, like, testified to Congress about, like, the danger the Avengers pose. There's bones in there of compelling story.
Yeah, even Kamala with the Inhuman stuff is a big thing too that plays in that game. Like, do more of that. But, like, again, my big thing is, like, just do a pure story mode game, and then, like, after that's out, add the multiplayer. But, like, that shouldn't have been the sell of your game. Like, refine your graphics, refine the story, like, actually, like, because, like I said, I feel like after every of the main characters gets their mission, like, it's the Captain America mission's the last one. Everything after that just feels so much of, like, oh, hop online so you can get this thing with your friends, or spend a little bit of money so you can be better by the time you get to the end.
It's a shame.
Yeah. And it's the Avengers too. Like, it's the Avengers. Like, I feel like that was their only crack, because, like, you can't make another Avengers game for, like, 10 plus years now without getting the taste out of their mouth.
I mean, you're seeing that play out because Iron Man's getting a game from EA that's independent of the Avengers.
Spider-Man 2's coming out. They just got a small update, and that was that Yuri Lowenthal said, like, I mean, obviously your main actor is going to say this, but, like, he said that, like, yes, we know, like, you guys are patiently waiting, but, like, he's like, you're going to be astonished when you play this game. Like, it's like...
He's still doing VO for it, too.
So, again, to our point, like, take your time. If that finished product's going to be so good.
Captain America, Black Panther.
I don't know what that. Oh, who was the character that I wanted in there? It was. What if the other person's Isaiah Bradley? That's what I thought about. I think that would be kind of. I have my maybe one day a good episode might be our pitches, like our Marvel pitches for like now and like going forward of like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What
kind of like what we did with DC.
Yeah, like I think we can have a Marvel episode like that. I was really thinking about like a Isaiah Bradley one shot, like show me Goyang. Like I want to see that and bring Sebastian Stan back and like have this almost like what's a good comp for it? Have this almost like Glory-esque like short, like do the special presentation because there's the comic that's based off this too, and you can put in a lot of relevant themes to modern times and kind of what applies to him. I think that would be and you get the right director to do it too. I think like you can have this really dark but like hopeful piece. I think I thought about this after I watched Devotion. I thought about this. I think this would have been really cool, but yeah.
Avengers, man.
Yeah. What are we doing?
So that's going to do it for us. You can follow us on Twitter at ProjectINF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. New episodes posted every Wednesday or Thursday or whenever we get around to it. Mostly Wednesdays, though.
We've been much better.
It was hectic couple weeks there for a while, but we're back on track. And you can follow us on Instagram
at the Project Infinite Pod.
Thank you very much. And next week I think we're just gonna do The Last of Us again,
episode 3,
because like we said, this is primed to be one of maybe the best episodes of TV ever.
Yeah, that's what people are saying. Yeah, who's been saying it? I am.
It's us.
Yeah, it's The Last of Us.
It's
3 weeks.
Last of Us.
This is 3 weeks, Joel. 3 weeks.
I can't take it anymore. So for me, this is gonna get hard if we keep doing Last of Us every week. From the resident Indonesian soldier of the podcast,
just the guy that takes her place.
It was that or a clicker, man. I don't know what to tell you.
You couldn't have given me like Tess.
Nah.
I wasn't good enough for Tess. And Anna Torb's, short time, she super impressed me. I can't stress that enough.
That's what I love about this show is like everyone. That's also why I feel like the acting is like, not to get distracted with this again, but the acting is so good. Independent of Bella and Pedro, like all these other actors are like, all right, I'm only going to get this amount of time.
I'm going to get my episode to shine. Like, Nico Parker had her episode. Now, Anna Torv has her episode.
Nick Offerman will get his episode next week.
The actors for Henry and Sam will get their episode. The actor for David will get his episode.
Gabriel Luna's going to get a big episode.
Storm Reed's going to get an episode playing Riley. Like, everybody's going to get their episode to, like...
Merle Dandridge
will
get a big episode. Yeah, so...
There's acting to be had.
Yeah, totally. And, I can't wait. Seriously, can't wait. So it's going to be a long trek to Sunday, but by the time you hear this, it'll be Wednesday.
Yeah,
so not that long.
Yep.
But we'll see you next week for more Last of Us. Until then, goodbye.
Peace.